Dare to type some rubbish on your computer in Britain and Keir Starmer will destroy your life. Child rapists, killers and robbers, meanwhile, well, carry on as you are, you're fine.
The authorities were withholding the identity of the suspect. Now, there are some reasons why they might do that, but obviously tensions locally were extremely high, feelings were extremely high, and the way to try to control the information obviously completely backfired, as you would expect it to. And that's led to these riots across city after city in the UK. It's extremely disturbing. These riots...
Douglas Murray's critique of the UK riots and the government's response is rooted in his broader concerns about societal decline and the need for strong, decisive leadership. He argues that without addressing the root causes of unrest, such as economic inequality, social fragmentation, and weak law enforcement, the UK will continue to face cycles of violence and disorder. Murray's calls for reform reflect a desire to see a more cohesive, stable society where law and order are respected, and where the government takes proactive steps to address the needs of all its citizens.
Well, it looks like paedophiles are treated better than people who write nasty things on the internet. And I say that because a convicted child rapist has escaped jail for a second time because our prisons are too overcrowded. So instead of banging up vile monsters, we're putting people who write some tweets during the riots in the slammer for arguably harsh and draconian sentences.
There is a growing perception that the justice system under Keir Starmer has adopted a disproportionately harsh stance on individuals convicted of online hate speech, while showing greater leniency towards those convicted of violent crimes. This perception has been fueled by cases where serious offenders have received sentences that many consider relatively light, in contrast to the severe legal consequences faced by those engaged in online misconduct. The UK government has implemented stringent measures to combat hate speech, disinformation, and offensive content online, often resulting in significant penalties, including prison sentences. Critics argue that this focus on policing online discourse is part of a broader trend toward restricting freedom of speech and expression, often at the expense of addressing more serious criminal offenses. This has led to concerns that the government is prioritizing the control of public discourse over the protection of citizens from violent crimes.
Okay, so
what do you mean I can't have any alcohol?
Okay, well I'll tell you. Okay, the time's 20 to 3, 14:40. I'm arresting you on suspicion of improper use of the Electronic Communications Network under
What?
127 of the Communications Act, okay? So you do not have to say that it may harm your defence if you don't mention one question, something which you later are in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence. Do you understand that?
So I'm actually being arrested?
You're going to be arrested, okay?
Right.
Take you back to the police station.
Right.
Okay, this is in relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page. Okay.
Oh, really? Oh, it's a Facebook crime, is it?
Okay.
Right.
So we need to ask you some questions about that.
Right.
Have you got anything in your pockets, Thomas?
I've got my keys. No, that's about it, I think. Keys.
So, anyone who's been arrested, we can search them under Section 32 of the Police and Criminal Act.
Right.
And that's for dangerous items.
You said I was going to be arrested under some what information? I'm going to be arrested for posting on Facebook.
Some comments that are offensive, obscene, and people have made a complaint about that, and it's transferred.
Can you tell me what this comment was?
Okay, well we'll do that when we interview.
All right. And so, what am I going to be locked up for the night, or?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Right. Do I need to take my medications with me?
Yes, we will look at taking all of those.
When do you need to take them?
Well, I've got pain medications, I've got sleeping medication, I've got anxiety medications, which I might take one of those in a bit. Okay. You know.
Well, if we take everything with us, then you've got everything there, haven't you?
And then we've got a nurse up there. They'll be able to. They'll be able to come and see you, and then once you've been there, they can assess whether or not medication can be issued. All right. So what we're going to do is, you want to pop yourself up. We're just going to search.
You need the glasses.
Yeah, search you.
To come with you.
My glasses.
Yeah. Do you want to take them with you?
Why?
First of all, I'm going to seize this, okay, as evidence. So it's
The perceived leniency towards violent offenders, coupled with the harsh treatment of those who engage in online speech offenses, has eroded public confidence in the justice system. Many feel that government priorities are misplaced, leading to a sense of injustice and frustration. This sentiment is particularly strong among those who believe that the legal system should focus on delivering justice to victims of serious crimes, rather than prioritizing speech management. Cases where individuals convicted of serious offenses, such as sexual offenses or violent assaults, have received sentences that many consider to be lenient. In some cases, these offenders have been released early from prison due to issues such as overcrowding. This has led to a growing perception that the justice system is not adequately punishing those who commit serious offenses, while punishing those who engage in online offensive behavior more severely.
When 3 Muslim men went across London Bridge slitting people's throats and shouting, "This is for Allah," and the Mayor of London and the then Prime Minister, Theresa May, came out and said that we need to address online radicalization. And then Theresa May set up somebody to look into the definition of extremism. What have they actually done in all of these years? Absolutely nothing. And it'll be the same with this. They'll lock some people up, and they will demonize all sorts of people, and they'll cover for others, but they will do nothing to address this. The British public have been begging for years for consecutive governments to bring down immigration and to increase opportunities in the UK. Not only were they not listened to, they were reviled, insulted, and much more. And, it also needs to be said, each of the towns in which these awful riots have been occurring are all places that are resonant with huge crimes that were covered up by almost everybody in authority. I'm thinking of what are called the grooming gangs, but are the rape gangs, which struck in Rotherham, in Rochdale, in town after town, whose names are back in the news now. And obviously there's no excuse for the rioting. Why does nobody in government, and a Labour government at that, not listen to these people, at least find out what has gone so badly wrong in these areas, that reports of who carried out this atrocity in Southport at the dance class for children, that could ignite a country? It doesn't suggest to me that the country is in a healthy state.
Murray criticized the government for its failure to address the underlying issues that led to the riots, such as economic inequality, lack of social cohesion, and apathy towards certain communities. He argued that by ignoring these problems, the government allowed frustrations to build up, eventually erupting into violence. Murray also pointed to inadequate law enforcement and policing policies as factors that exacerbated the situation, asserting that a tougher stance on criminal behavior was necessary. Beyond the government's immediate shortcomings, Murray emphasized the broader societal breakdowns that he believed were fueling the rise in civil unrest. These included a loss of shared values, a decline in respect for authority, and the erosion of community ties. He warned that without a concerted effort to rebuild these aspects of society, the UK would continue to experience outbreaks of violence and chaos.
I quote, "If we had been in different times, then it would have been virtually inevitable you would have gone into custody. The only reason you've escaped immediate custody today is because of the prison overcrowding crisis." There we have it. So meanwhile, if you so much as observe this month's riots from the sidelines as an innocent bystander, another judge previously warned you'll be refused bail and banged up in custody too. And elsewhere, the mother of teenager Gordon Galt, who was killed in a knife attack, has expressed her shock and disbelief after being told in a letter that one of the people jailed for her son's death will be released early from prison as part of Labour's plans to make way for new inmates. Gordon, who was aged just 14, died of a stab wound in 2022 in Newcastle following an attack by Carlos Nito and Lawson Natty, pictured here. Natty will have served just 40% of his entire sentence when he's released early in just a few weeks' time. And last but not least, today it's revealed 30-year-old Walid Raoul, also known as the Rolex Ripper, has also been allowed to walk free after attempting to steal a 50 grand watch in London. And again, the judge blames prison overcrowding. He has 9 convictions. 9 previous convictions, unbelievable, for 14 offences. So there we have it. Dare to type some rubbish on your computer in Britain and Keir Starmer will destroy your life. Child rapists, killers and robbers, meanwhile, well, carry on as you are, you're fine.
The UK prison system has struggled with overcrowding for many years, which has sometimes led to the early release of prisoners, including those convicted of serious crimes. Unfortunately, this can result in dangerous individuals being released early, raising significant concerns about public safety. Specific cases where convicted sex offenders or violent criminals have been released early due to overcrowding have sparked considerable public and media outrage. These cases often receive widespread attention, especially when contrasted with the harsh sentences imposed on individuals convicted of online hate speech or other non-violent offenses. This disparity in treatment has fueled a narrative that the priorities of the justice system are out of sync with public expectations of fairness and safety. The focus on online hate speech and offensive content reflects a broader societal trend toward greater sensitivity to issues of discrimination, racism, and hatred. While these are important issues, critics argue that the justice system's emphasis on policing speech should not come at the expense of adequately punishing those who commit serious crimes.
Unrest, the far right, they say, fueled by disinformation online. There's even suggestions of banning platforms like X and cracking down further on free speech. Is that the answer to what we are seeing, which are really clearly deep underlying issues in communities across the country, from places like Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Rotherham, Middlesbrough, London, and even as far as Belfast in Northern Ireland?
You know, the last few days have shown the Labour government refusing to concede that there is anything other than what they call far-right violence going on. They claim that there isn't a two-tier policing system in the UK, which everybody with their own eyes can see is not the case. Clearly, there is a two-tier policing system in the UK. These areas where this has happened in, what's more, are all areas where there were riots in 2011. And as I write in The Spectator this week, one of the interesting things about that is that all of these areas are, among other things, areas where migration has continued to increase and joblessness has gone up. Now, just think of those two factors, anyone watching. You keep forcing immigration onto these areas, and you do nothing to improve the lot in these areas. Of course, nobody should be on the streets. The unbelievable hooliganism and thuggery of recent days should repel everybody. But, you know, very often when there is some kind of violence or unrest, we hear political leaders and the wise heads in the commentariat saying we need to address underlying causes. Why has nobody said that in recent days?
In recent years, the UK government under Keir Starmer has stepped up efforts to combat hate speech, disinformation and other forms of offensive content online. This has led to the implementation of strict laws that carry significant penalties, including fines, community service, and in some cases, imprisonment. These laws are part of a broader strategy to create a safer and more inclusive online environment, but critics say the penalties can be excessive, especially when compared to more serious crimes. Douglas Murray has been critical of what he sees as a two-tier policing system in the UK. The term refers to the idea that law enforcement applies different standards or levels of enforcement depending on the political or social group involved. Murray argues that this system undermines public trust in the police and the rule of law, as it creates the perception that certain groups are unfairly favored or targeted. Murray cites specific examples to illustrate his point, such as the differing responses of police to protests by different political groups. He also points to instances where individuals who engage in certain types of crimes, such as hate speech, are prosecuted more aggressively than those who commit other crimes, leading to the perception of selective enforcement. These examples are used to argue that the police are prioritizing certain agendas rather than applying the law consistently.
There was a woman the other day jailed for throwing water at a policeman.
It's just a joke.
And that poor deluded woman in Cheshire who's caring for a husband. What sort of dreadful life has she got? And she lost it, and she tweeted about mosques. It was inciting violence, and that is wrong and criminal. But she shouldn't be locked up. But mate, that's what really worries me about this. But yeah, you've got people being let out of prison now who I think it's questionable whether or not they are a danger to the public. I tend to think some of them are, and should be incarcerated far more than somebody who's a keyboard warrior.
Oh, I mean, of course they're dangerous, but child rapists, robbers who go around stealing 50 grand watches, and killers who have they've plunged knives into people. People are walking the streets, Charlie Rowley, and yet...
The UK's preference for punishing keyboard warriors who post hateful content online rather than releasing violent criminals and sex offenders has raised significant concerns about public safety and the effectiveness of the justice system in protecting society from dangerous individuals. The contrast between the harsh treatment of online offenders and the perceived leniency towards violent criminals has fueled public and media outrage. High-profile cases where convicted sex or violent criminals have been released early, only to re-offend, have fueled these concerns. The media often highlights these cases, drawing attention to what many see as a warped sense of justice, where the focus on online speech regulation overshadows the need for harsh consequences for serious crimes. This perceived imbalance in the justice system has led to a growing sense of frustration and disillusionment among the public. Many feel that the government's priorities are misplaced, with too much emphasis on policing speech and not enough on ensuring that dangerous criminals are kept behind bars. This erosion of trust in the justice system could have long-term consequences, including reduced cooperation with law enforcement and a sense of insecurity in the community. In response to these concerns, there are growing calls for reform in the UK's criminal justice system. Advocates for change argue that the government needs to reassess its approach to sentencing and early release policies, ensuring that violent criminals face the full extent of the law and that public safety is a priority. At the same time, there is a push for a more balanced approach to regulating online content, one that doesn't disproportionately punish speech while ignoring more serious offenses.
1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment.
The case involving Judge Guy Curl has sparked considerable controversy due to the stark contrast in the judgments between two cases he presided over. In one instance, Judge Curl allowed a man convicted of possessing abusive images to go free, while in the other he sentenced a man to 20 months in prison for posting offensive material on Facebook. Judge Curl sentenced the man to 20 months in prison for making an offensive post on Facebook. The post was deemed to incite hatred or violence, warranting a harsh sentence. This decision highlights the UK government's tough approach to combating hate speech and offensive content online. However, the severity of the sentence has been widely criticized, particularly when compared to the lenient treatment of the individual convicted of possessing abusive material. The stark contrast between the two sentences has sparked widespread public and media outrage. Many view the disparity in sentencing as a clear indication that the justice system's priorities are skewed.
And yet, as Liz said, keyboard warriors, whether the stuff they said was disgusting or not, a lot of it was, they're banged up for what I'd argue is pretty draconian sentences.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, you know, the point is that you've got to have enough prison places for all of these people, frankly. So, of course, you don't want to release people who are violent, people that are a threat to us in our everyday lives, whether they're robbers, killers, murderers, rapists, and the like of that particular low-life ilk. So you don't want those people in and around society. But, of course, I think if you are a keyboard warrior, if you are inciting hate, if you are throwing water at a police officer or an emergency service worker, I do think that actually warrants a bit of more than a slap on the wrist.
Oh, Charlie, come on.
And if a judge decides, as Liz was saying, if that's the judicial system, if a judge decides that actually that is the appropriate sentencing, then there should be a prison place for you.
They didn't all those judges around the country didn't independently, with their own thought process, decide on those levels of sentencing. They were told from above. You know, throwing water at somebody, a police officer, and yet we still haven't had any arrests when caught on video were those thugs in Manchester Airport punching policemen and women in the face. They still haven't been charged.
It is ironic that serious crimes, such as abuse or violence, are often met with lighter sentences focused on rehabilitation rather than imprisonment, while acts like throwing water at a protest are prosecuted harshly. This inconsistency undermines public confidence in the justice system. People expect that violent crimes, which pose an immediate threat to physical safety, should receive the harshest sentences. When they see that online speech, which typically does not cause physical harm, is punished more severely, it creates a profound sense of injustice and frustration.